Well, thank you. I'd like to thank the Santan chapter for having me be their speaker. My name is Richard Gonsalves. I'm the president of the Agave House chapter in Heber Overgaard. And with that, I'll go ahead and get started. If everyone will mute their microphone and turn off their video. If anybody on Zoom would like to ask a question, they can hold the space bar down and ask the question. That will temporarily take you off of mute. Well, with that, I'll go ahead and start my PowerPoint. Okay, this is my Emerging Stories in Petroglyphs version 2023. I grew up in Snowflake, and can you guys see a black bar on the bottom?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hopefully it'll go away right soon. I grew up in Snowflake and I was familiar with petroglyphs my whole life. I was into photography and I was concerned about graffiti, vandalism, and theft. I wanted to preserve the petroglyphs, so I started photographing them. My presentation will include calendrical and astronomical finds, culture and legends, connections to the Aztecs and the Chinese. I'm not a archaeologist, so that is a good thing. That way I get to talk about anything I want. What are petroglyphs and why were they made? Some petroglyphs depict anthropomorphs, zoomorphs, geometric shapes and patterns. Some petroglyphs are calendrical markers or astronomical objects, calendars and stars. Cultural depictions, cultures interact by sharing, borrowing, and exchanging ideas in both directions. Some petroglyphs are total mysteries, and a very few I have found are ancient Chinese, some 2,000 to 3,000 years old. Petroglyph panels. Some panels have historic images from around 1650 through the early 1900s, such as horses and trains. Some panels have prehistoric images dating back hundreds of years to thousands or even tens of thousands of years. Some panels are mixtures of images from different ages, different peoples, different cultures, all mixed together on the same panel. My talk may seem disjointed because the panels are mixtures. My talk will mainly be about petroglyphs that I have personally found or helped find. Petroglyphs are a mystery, and I will be offering one explanation out of many possibilities. Can we date the petroglyphs? If so, how? Weathering is one way. Different rock types weather at different rates. Soft sandstone weathers faster than granite or volcanic rock. Exposure to the sun, wind, and water. Protected rocks erode slower than exposed rocks. Desert varnish. It takes thousands of years to form, but it depends on many factors: weather, water, wind, and exposure. Surrounding features and images may hint at a date, but may not be accurate. Here's weathering. What you see here is probably around 800 years old. They're very bright and brilliant. But do you see something right here, down here, 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 and here? I enhanced them so you can see them. They could be thousands of years old, and they've been weathered to where you almost can't see them. Desert varnish. On the left, I've enhanced this so you can see what it looked like possibly when it was first made. And here's the desert varnish. But you can see this is only about 3 inches tall, but yet the top is totally repatinated, and the bottom looks almost brand new. So it's hard to date by just repatination. Now here's John Rushcamp and his wife, Linda, and myself, and Roxanne Knight. We went out. I took them to see some petroglyphs. This panel behind us at the time, I had no idea what it was. Some people looked at it and said, well, that's a UFO, but I don't know. Since then, I've actually discovered what I think it is, and I'll be talking about that in a little bit. John Rushcamp wrote a book. You can buy it. The Chinese writings that he found are within 3,700 to 2,200 years old at the dawn of writing in China. It is not modern Chinese script. For in-depth information, you can go to his website or buy his book. This is a chart that I made up of 104 of the best petroglyphs that match the ancient Chinese script. You can download it from John's AsiaticEchoes.org and print a copy out for yourself. This is what his website looks like. And here in the yellow, it will take you to where that chart is. I also have a YouTube channel that I've put my talks on, and I'll be putting this talk on my channel here when I get it edited. Here's John's talk. This is 3 years old. It's quite old, but yet it has a lot of information. We've updated so many things that it's hard to keep up to date on it. Here's a brief history of the Chinese writing. How did the different eras come about? In the beginning, scribes could not always read each other's writings. Great for job security, but not for preserving knowledge. A new emperor would gather the scribes and have them standardize and simplify the writing system, creating a new era. Then the scribes would be tasked with translating the old records into the new system. To enforce the new system, the old records would be destroyed. That would end the old era. And this is the names of some of the eras that the writing has changed. The oldest form is oracle bone, and in 1899, farmers started finding bones in a field with unknown writing on them. Today, they're still not completely translated, and they offer a reward for translating an unknown script character. And you can see some of the script, and this one has a petroglyph that matches it, meaning rain. Here is the script of mother and son, and here's the Chinese writing that shows that. Now here is the word mother in different eras. This script lasted for several eras, but every scribe made them slightly different, which made it difficult for people to read each other's writing. Now here is the word mother, lactating breasts. John found this petroglyph in the Mojave Desert, and I found this one in the Tularosa River in New Mexico. They even had a little feather or leaf looking thing on both of them, but the one I found, it was chipped out and hard to see. They clearly knew what they were doing and what they were writing. If it says more than mother, I'm not sure, but at least that identifies that they were here and were writing. the scribes knew what these petroglyphs meant. And here's an example. This one has a little hat on him. Well, the petroglyph has it, but the hat's up here. They knew it was necessary, but they didn't put it in the same place. This one is Hugh family. It has a little line across this P-looking part. In the petroglyph, they put it down here. They clearly knew that it had to be there. They just put it in a different place. Here's one that's quite interesting. You see this. This is the word hand. They only used 3 fingers. It made it very easy and fast to write. And you knew that it means hand or to grab. And down here is a little tick mark. In the Chinese writing, it has the hand and a little tick mark to put your finger on the wrist. And you could feel your pulse on your wrist. And this is the sun. So it shows the pulsations of the sun, which the hand on with a finger on the wrist to feel a pulse, plus the reference to a sun, it means a period of time, such as a week. And here is the description. They gave us a way to know what this means. This is the moon. Here's the hand with the finger to feel a pulse and the sun, meaning a period of time. And 3 concentric circles, meaning 3 10-day weeks or a lunar month. They described it. Here is Wu, meaning shaman. And this is in several different places that John and I have found. Look how identical it is. They clearly knew that that's what it meant. Could sound be a wavy line or a spiral or both? Here is a wavy line and a spiral with a coyote. The same wavy line and a spiral with more coyotes in the petrified forest. Here in Grapevine is a wavy line with a circle around a coyote howling at the moon. Clearly, they were repeating the same knowledge that the wavy line and a spiral is sound. Okay, here I show that these are the sounds of an animal, of the coyote. On this one, it is yip, 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 ow. Here's a coyote with a spiral. More coyotes with a kind of a wavy line and a spiral. Here's a bird with a circle coming out of his mouth, meaning he's chirping. Here's more coyotes with a wavy line above them. Here's a elk with a spiral, meaning he's bugling. Here's another elk with a wavy line. So we have the sounds of an animal. We also have, here is a spiral coming out of a Chinese word meaning thunder. So it repeats thunder and the sound. Here is Ahayute, the Zuni god of thunder and lightning. You can see sparks coming out of his hair. His hand is throwing lightning at this pottery design, meaning rain clouds, and a big, fat, wavy line on top, meaning thunder. Here's a guy beating on a drum, and the wavy lines underneath is the drum beats. Since there's 2 wavy lines, I think it means echo. Here is a meteor or UFO, whatever your imagination thinks, and a wavy line meaning the sound of the sonic boom of this object moving through the sky. And here is a bighorn sheep with a spiral coming out of his rear end, meaning sound. And here are the Chinese words that match them. This is Lu, musical tone, identical to the petroglyph. Thunder or echo, again in the petroglyphs. Down here is Lu, the sound of music, next to the spiral coming out of the rear end of a bighorn sheep. Clearly, there's two languages on this. They both reinforce each other, the sound of the spiral and the Chinese that match it. Is this a Rosetta Stone? The Chinese script Lu, musical tone, and the American sound, the wavy line in a spiral? When did I become passionate about petroglyphs? I was into photography. I was interested in petroglyphs and their meanings, and I was concerned about graffiti, vandalism, and theft. So I started photographing the petroglyphs to preserve them. Well, this is the one that just really caught my eye and made me passionate. I took this petroglyph picture and I took it home and I tried to put it in my computer, and I'm putting it in the wrong place. I just couldn't figure it out. Why am I putting this in the wrong place? Well, I went through my pictures and I found this panel. I didn't make a mistake. Here are two petroglyph panels that are almost the same. You have this geometric shape. I don't know what that is yet. We're still analyzing it. But you have twin stars and twin stars in both panels. Here's more twin stars. You have the macaws. You have the macaws. They were telling the same story. This panel had a story to tell. And this is where I became so excited that these petroglyphs actually mean something. And I set out on a quest to find out what. I find twin stars in quite a few places. So they definitely had a meaning to somebody. They also have what I consider the Milky Way, just a bunch of dots like a shotgun blast. When I first saw them, I thought that's what it was, is somebody was shooting it with a shotgun and they were trying to destroy it. But when I found out they're in multiple places, no, it's not somebody trying to destroy vandalism. This is part of the petroglyphs. So in 2020, we had a conjunction of planets. Saturn and Jupiter came together. On the 8th, they were quite far away. The 12th, they were closer. The 16th, they were closer. And by December 21st, they're almost together. The conjunction of planets, they called it the Christmas star. And I thought, well, maybe if I go back in time. I went back to 1226, December 18th. Saturn and Venus are together, and Jupiter is way up here. By December 26th, Venus had moved away from Saturn and joined Jupiter. You had twin stars here on the 18th. You had twin stars here on the 26th. The winter solstice is the 21st. So this happened during the winter solstice when they were watching the sky. And this is what I think they saw. Venus moved away from Saturn and moved up next to Jupiter. And so the petroglyph panel, this is what I think they were trying to say. Venus was down here by Saturn, and it moved up to Jupiter. And because of that, they used the macaw as a ceremony. So there's a solar standstill that lasts 8 days, 4 days before the solstice and 4 days after the solstice. With the naked eye, you cannot see the slight movement of the sun, and so it looks like the sun stands still for 8 days. And so for us, the winter solstice, the 24th or 21st, plus 4 days equal 25th. That is why Christmas Day is on the 25th. I spent my whole life trying to figure out why did they put it on the 25th. That's the first day they can see movement, that the sun starts back to the north. The twin stars were on these very important 8 days. The ceremony with the macaw and the beating of the drums echoing through the canyon. And I got to ask, this is 1226. How in the world did they know Saturn had a ring around it? I'll let your imagination answer that question. Now, here's another petroglyph that I found. When I saw this, I got super excited and I jumped up and I turned around and looked at the mountains behind me. And I knew exactly what it meant. This is hard to see, and it was very difficult. I had to climb right on top of it to see it. But this is what I saw. Can anybody tell me what they think it is? When I saw this, I knew this was Orion's belt. Orion. Orion dominates the winter sky. And I turned around and I looked at the mountain, and this is what my mind's eye saw. I saw the sun coming up and walking up the side of the mountain. So here's Orion and the Orion's belt. And here's the full panel. I darkened it in so you can see it. And what this panel tells me is here's a woman, she's giving birth, which means a new beginning. Here's Orion. Orion dominates the winter sky, and you can actually see the Milky Way here and here. And this figure here, it looks like an E laying on its back. That means mountain. And here's a Navajo rug that's called the Four Sacred Mountains. So the Navajos use the same symbol, meaning mountain. And to me at the time, I saw the mountain having roots on it, or meaning that the mountain was alive or the mountain could grow. John Rushkamp found something a little more exact, but it does mean the same thing. But this is my first impression. And you can see the sun. So if you look over the mountain, you'll see the sun come up. And so I went out to see the winter solstice. Now, here's what John found. You see, it does have the E, but look at this. This is filled in. They darkened it in. So it wasn't an accident. They knew exactly what they were making. This is the Chinese word sui, meaning a yearly event. The winter solstice comes once a year, a yearly event. So I took my car and little camper and camped out. Um, After we set up the time lapse camera before the sun came up, Ramsey and I, my grandson, went out exploring while the time lapse camera was taking the picture of the sun. And we found plenty of stuff to look at while we were just passing the time. And this was the picture that I got. The sun came right up. I didn't know where, but the top of this mountain has been excavated. They have been taking cinders off of it. They've been mining for years, so the top doesn't look like it used to. But this is the sun, and it walks right up the side of the mountain. To me, that told me that they knew that was a place to observe the winter solstice. Now, a couple of 100 yards away, I found this spiral. And I went out on June 22nd, and it marks the summer solstice within 200 yards of the winter solstice. And another 50 yards or so away, here's this little rock wall. I looked at this thing for over 5 years. Why did they make a little rock wall? I just, I just couldn't figure it out. I mean, it's not part of a building. It doesn't enclose anything. They couldn't have put animals or children behind the rock wall. Why did they make a little tiny rock wall? Well, I had a guy give a talk on rock cairns, which are stacked rocks. And he suggested that I look for things like snakes or Quetzalcoatl. And after I went back out there, and this is what I saw. I think during their ceremonies, they probably painted this to make it stand out, but I added a mouth, a nose, and an eye so you can see what I see. But I think this was an effigy of their Quetzalcoatl. And a year ago, December 2022, I went down to Yuma or Gila Bend, and here is a petroglyph meaning the sun, the Chinese word Ra, meaning the sun. And so I got up before sunrise to see what I would see. And sure enough, here's the sun coming up in a notch in the mountains. Another winter solstice marker that nobody knows about. So far, I'm the only one that has discovered this. Okay, let's move to Springerville, Casa Malapais. In Casa Malapais, there's this square kiva. And if you look up over the mountain, up on the top, you can see the little Colorado River down here. If you look up over the mountain, across the mountain, down into the valley on the other side is the Hooper Pueblo. And there's a kiva right in that exact line. And if you keep going, there's a sun dagger on the mountain, on the side of the cliff. That is a straight line. How did they know to get that to be a straight line that's almost 4 kilometers distance away up over a mountain? Well, here's the sun dagger panel. The sun dagger lasts for 3.5 hours on the summer solstice. Here is an atlatl or a hilt. I don't really know what it is. Here's the Hopi and Zuni legend of the twin gods of thunder and lightning. And you notice that the legend talks about one of the gods cutting a head off. And so he has a severed head in his hand. And here's a spiral. And then on down is an S with a little doorway in it. Well, as the sun dagger comes out, it first goes into the handle of this atlatl or whatever it is, and it cuts right through the center. The bottom of it cuts through the spiral, and the point goes right through the doorway in this S. A few minutes later, the sun dagger moves down into the hand of one of the twin gods that holds the severed head. And it looks like he's got a sword or something in his hand, in his right hand. And so I made this little video. It takes 3.5 hours for the sun dagger to progress down through this panel. Well, none of the archaeologists knew about that. And so on June 21st in 2019, I led a group of archaeologists out to see this sun dagger. They didn't know about it. Here's another. This is in Show Low. Anybody have an idea what this could be? Well, I see a bright sun. I see 3 dark suns. And then I see 2 dim suns. There was a total solar eclipse in 1379 that went right through Show Low, Arizona. And some Indians wrote it down. They show what the sun looked like as a single event, all tied together as a single event. I think this is the summer or eclipse. I've shown this to quite a few archaeologists, and they're not really on board with it yet. Here's another spiral that I found. And here is a spire that I thought, if the shadow of this at sunrise went through this spiral, that would mean something. And so I went out and I set up my time-lapse camera, and you can see the shadow. And I was thinking that this point would go right through the spiral. And so this is what I got. Sure enough, it went right through the spiral. The only problem, this was March 5th, 15 days before the spring equinox. So it did measure the equinox, but they had to have something else actually get the right day. This is 2 weeks before. So on the spring equinox, possibly this would be. It's a different point, but it is part of the same thing. And I also put a rock right here, thinking that possibly they would use it in this manner. So I don't know how they used it, but I think it does mark the spring equinox. It marks it 2 weeks before the actual day. And just over the hill, I don't know, 50 yards, I see this triangle-shaped rock. And here is a lizard and another lizard. And John Rushkamp told me that lizards normally point north, or turtles. They give you the cardinal directions. And so on this rock, here is the one on the south side actually pointing north. And this one is on the north side, pointing south. And here's Ramsey. This rock right here has this on it, meaning the east side. And then where I'm standing taking the picture is this one, which would show the west. So here's 4 cardinal directions, right close to that equinox spiral. Now here's a petroglyph that very possibly goes with the legend of the tethered sun. Legends tell of a god or a powerful man who ties a rope to the sun to drag it into the sky, or to slow it down if it's going too fast, slow it down to a 24-hour day. And here's a picture showing what they could have looked at and thought, this is what those magical ropes are that are tying the sun. Now, these are trail markers. They're normally something that looks like a foot with a wavy line and a starting point. This trail marker tells you where the trails are. Well, I found this. Could this be part of the emergence story of the Hopi and the Zuni? They said that they climbed out of a hole in the Grand Canyon called the Sipapu, and they climbed out on a vine like a beanstalk, like Jack and the Beanstalk. I don't know what else this could be, but possibly a beanstalk. Well, across the canyon, another 50 yards or so, I found this. Here's a hole with maybe a beanstalk coming out and a trail marker, but it's not a foot. They did not walk out of the Sipapu. They climbed a beanstalk. Here's another one, quarter, half mile away. It has a natural hole with possibly a beanstalk and footprints saying they walked away from it. But these are very close together. People from MUFON may ask, what of the legends of the Zuni and the Hopi? Do any petroglyphs depict star people or ant people? Do any petroglyphs depict UFOs? Well, that's the question that Clifford Mahooty asked me. And so I took him down and showed him these petroglyphs. And I asked him, what do an ant person look like? He says, heck, I don't know. That we just call them ant people. So he really couldn't tell me if this was ant people or not, but we just kind of talked about it as ant people. And here are several ant people petroglyphs. They're all over in our area, a bunch of different shapes. Some of them have different vestments, but they all have very similar big heads, big eyes, and large antennas. How about star people? Well, I don't know what these are, but they don't look real human to me. I'll let your imagination run wild. This guy has a star on his head. And this guy is in the Milky Way with the stars. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I just threw it in here because they do kind of look like star people. Well, here's a petroglyph. I didn't take this one. This one's over in, oh, darn it. Let's see. This is in, I think it says Coal Canyon. I can't read it. This is a snake, possibly Quetzalcoatl. Looks like he's eating people. And here's people inside of the snake. Here's another one, fish. Jonah and the whale. This one is in New Mexico, the Three Rivers, I think it says. I didn't take these pictures, so I don't know. But you see definitely a person inside the fish. And here's a UFO or meteor coming through the sky. It does have the wavy line for the sound that it would make. This is a Sipapu Bridge. I showed this at one of my other talks, and Clifford Mahooty gave me this picture, and Ron Regier was in the audience, and he says, "I know where Clifford got that. That's my picture." So anyway, I'm giving him credit for the picture. Uh, I'll let your imagination tell you what you think it is. And I also want to talk about the White Sands National Park. The latest research shows that humans have been living in the North America and the Tularosa Basin for at least 23,000 years. It was previously thought that humans arrived in North America closer to 13,500 to 16,000 years. And that theory has now been debunked. The land bridge theory is totally debunked. That they went excavating down into the sand, they would find where the footprints were on top, and then they would dig down and find that the footprints continued. And so they were able to find human footprints right next to some of these ancient animals that are now extinct in North America. And they were able to date some of the seeds and pollen to date these footprints back 23,000 years ago. I wanted to show that I found a couple of projectile points. These were dated. Some of the archaeologists looked at them and dated them for me. They're somewhere around 6,000 years old, but they look brand new. Here's some spear points or projectile points that I have found. When I first found these, I got so excited. I found an arrowhead. And then I looked at it and, dang, these are poor workmanship. They're really amateurish. And then I turned them over, and on the back side, they were colored, but on the front side, they were totally bleached white. And all of a sudden, I became excited again. These are really, really old. I used to think that possibly they were up to 12, 14,000 years old. Now that we know that humans have been here for up to 23,000 years, the age of these can go back much further now. They could be 16, 18, 20,000 years old. Who knows? I don't know if there's a way that I can find out how rocks bleach when they're left out in the sun. Possibly I can get somebody to actually date them for me. I've also found elongated skulls in the petroglyphs. Well, here's in the Paracas Valley in Peru, here are some elongated skulls. And pre-Inca and Egyptian also showed that they have elongated skulls. But how did they know about them here in Snowflake, Arizona? Paracas, Peru is a long ways away. Also, I'm finding a lot of petroglyphs showing what I call a D-man. If you look at the left arm, he has his left arm on his hip. And that's why I call him a D-man. Well, I asked Clifford if he knew what these meant. He said, sure. The left hand on the hip holds the medicine bag, and the right hand in the air, he spreads corn pollen. He's performing a ceremony. And here's Clifford performing a ceremony. He's got his left hand on his medicine bag, and his right hand, he's scattering corn pollen. We also have the macaws, but these are special shapes. For some reason, they have a round head. Here's one with one tail. This one has two. This one has three. We find macaws in the petroglyphs quite over in around the Snowflake area. Is there anything that ties the Chinese to the Americas? Well, the Chinese Quetzalcoatl looks almost exactly like the Chinese dragon, which is a kind of a snake-looking thing with little short arms and legs. The Mayan Codex is Quetzalcoatl didn't have arms and legs, but the Chinese do. But they look quite similar. How would a Chinese artist in China and a Mayan Indian in Mexico City draw very similar pictures? Well, here is some petroglyphs. This one's in Snowflake. Here is a rattlesnake. You can see his little rattles, and he's got a strange face, but little tiny short arms. Here is outside of Holbrook. Here's another snake. Again, he's a rattlesnake, little tiny short arms. Here's another one. You can see he's rattles. These are spikes, not round beads. The spike means sound. And the little short arms. Here's another one on this side, the rattles and the little short arms. I'm finding quite a few. Here's one up in Wild Horse that has more of a dragon-looking head, Chinese dragon-looking head, with little short arms. And here in Rochester Creek, again, another snake with a dragony looking head, little short arms. And they even put them in their pottery. Little short arms and legs. This one only has two, just the front legs. Now here is a petroglyph in the museum in China. They dated this back to 200 BC. You can see a guy crouched down on one knee shooting a bow and arrow. It looks exactly like the petroglyphs here in Snowflake. The guys are down on one knee shooting a bow and arrow. You see his elbow sticking out. Every one of these have his elbow sticking out. Very similar. This may not prove anything, but the more evidence you get, maybe it does mean something. Now here is the Chinese word bell. And here is a brass bell with Bronze Age writing on it. And this is why they call it Bronze Age, is because it was found in their bronze bells. It has a place to hang it up, a clapper maybe, and the sides to reverberate the sound. Well, here is the Chinese word for bell here in Snowflake, a place to hang it up, the clapper, the sides of the bell to reverberate the sound. And here is a guy upside down, meaning he's dead. Well, the Chinese rang bells for funerals, and the man upside down, meaning he's dead, shows that this is a funeral. Now, I told you that I would tell you what this is. This is what I would see as a bell, a place to hang it up, the sides and the clapper. This looks more like the bell that I'm familiar with, but it has the guy upside down. It has the bird to carry the spirit to the afterlife, and maybe a kachina to be part of the thing. But the Indians didn't have metal. They would not have known what a bell was. These were not made by Indians. These were made by the Chinese. And right next to the bell is this symbol. John sent this over to China, and they sent back the meaning is Huan, meaning the Huan River in China. Here's the river. They sometimes in Chinese not have all three wavy lines, but just little showing that there are a flow or river, which this has the river. Now this one is over by Woodruff. Chew, to go out, to send forth. Very, very close. Well, John and I went over by what's that lake? Lyman Lake, and we found this one. Again, chew, but it has this on there, which means the mouth, which means I'm telling you to go out, meaning exit. And here it is in the petroglyph that the word exit. Here's another petroglyph with the Chinese symbol, we. Again, in December of last year, I went over to Painted Rock, and here is the Chinese word, large tree. And if you look up here, I've enlarged it, you can see Zhong and Tien. I'm sure you've all heard of Tiananmen Square. It means a subdivided field or a city block. And so here's three Chinese words all in the same picture, dating back some 3,000 years. Zhong, Tian, and we. Here in the same place, I found this. This looks like you have your cupped hands joining your fingers together, meaning to join or friendship. But they put modifiers on there, a line above and a line below. It means joining heaven and earth. John asked two different people from China if they could read that, and they said, sure, it means mutual. Well, in today's modern world, it means mutual. Here's another. This is in Winslow in the Homology. Here is the circle with a dot in it, meaning the sun, same way as the sun here, Ra. And this is the horizon, meaning the sun comes up above the horizon. It's the word early. And here it is in the petroglyphs in the Homology ruin in Winslow. They also used facing birds, twin facing birds. And here we find them in petroglyphs. This is the word lu, meaning salt. You would put salt water in these little reservoirs, and as the water evaporated, it would leave the salt, and you'd gather them up out of these evaporation ponds. Well, here is several of these figures that I believe are the word salt, and they're next to the Zuni Salt Lake in New Mexico. Here's another one, kun, meaning difficult. This kind of looks like it's a man, but again, it's not. This is a map, meaning we journeyed from here over to here, and it was a difficult journey. I found this in Springerville. Supreme God. Fee, meaning not. Woo, shaman. Now here's all of these depict the word boat. Here's a river with a boat traveling in the middle of the river. These are probably the ribs of the boat. But every one of these is a different scribe and their version of the word boat. And here is in Snowflake the word boat over water. There is no lake or ocean or anything to brag about in Arizona that you'd need a boat to get across water with. I think they're trying to say they came from a land over the ocean in a boat. Connections in the Americas. Is there a connection between the Aztecs of Mesoamerica and the Anasazi of the American Southwest? I'll briefly talk about this. Connections in the Americas. The Aztecs themselves claim they came from the mountains to the north. Could they have come from the American Southwest, from Casa Malapais, Chaco, Mesa Verde, or even southern Utah? Is there any evidence? Well, the Mesoamerica have Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec god, the feathered serpent. This is in the Museum of Anthropology in Mexico City. And here is a petroglyph outside of Holbrook. It's an up and down, wavy type sea serpent, not a zigzaggy rattlesnake. Here on the Hooper Pueblo was this Quetzalcoatl. It was buried probably up to about right here. Here's the first half, and then there is a second hump. Back in the 60s, Roxanne Knight used to live on the ranch that this was on, and her dad gave him to somebody in Springerville, and he put him up on the street in Springerville. Well, people objected, and so they ended up breaking it off somewhere. And this is in the Springerville Museum today. I darkened the eyes and the mouth and the nostrils so that you can see the face on it, but it is a serpent and a little taco looking thing that they could have put flowers or incense or something as a sacrificial offering. Connections in the Americas. Is there a connection between the Aztecs of Mesoamerica, the Anasazi of American Southwest? I would have to say yes. Parting thoughts. There is more to history than is being taught. There are more mysteries yet to be discovered. Keep your eyes and your mind open. To be continued. Okay, is there any questions or comments?
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
We'll have to applaud for you again.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Are there any questions?
I have one question.
Okay.
When you showed the petroglyph where the coyote, and you went and said the jagged was the yip, 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 yip. Oh, okay.
Yes. Uh-huh.
That went from right to left.
Right.
Did that ever occur to you? Because the
Well,
Japanese right to left.
so do the Chinese. So that is another thing that in the petroglyphs we see things being written right to left. And I was reading them that way. And you noticed on the winter solstice, the woman giving birth was on the right. The the stars, the mountain, and the sun, they progressed from right to left.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Any other questions?
There's a question in the back, and you're probably not going to be able to hear it. If you say it, I can repeat it.
Okay.
Oh, a Quetzalcoatl.
Yes.
Is that just another word for snake? Is it an object? Is it a mythological object? What exactly is a Quetzalcoatl?
Quetzalcoatl is the Mayan god of a feathered serpent or a flying serpent. That was their god. And the Chinese, they have their dragon, and you see in some of their ceremonies, they have a big long dragon. They run up and down the streets. Again, mythology in China, they thought that the dragons could fly.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
From the Zoom here. I missed the very beginning, but I'm curious to know, like, how long have they been comparing like the Chinese symbols to what you're seeing today? What's
Okay, John Rushkamp and I have been doing this for the last several years, and we're pioneering it. We're the leading edge. There's other people, what's the Indians in Mexico? The Olmecs. The Olmecs. They have things that resemble Chinese. So there are people in Mexico that are looking at that, but John Rushkamp and I are the only ones that are really pushing it.
Anybody else?
are you aside from the slideshow, are you working on any books with all these comparisons?
Well, John Rushkamp's already written a book. We have found so many things new that I don't think he wants to go back and rewrite his book, but we've doubled our knowledge in the last 2 years.
Wow.
Or so. John just had a guy from Mexico send him a petroglyph picture that I believe means father. And so we've now found 3 areas that we're finding Chinese writing. Along Route 66, that was a trade route that the Indians had, and the Chinese would have to follow that trade route to be able to eat every single night. And so the petroglyphs are only on basically Route 66. Then I went down by Yuma last year, Gila Bend, and found a whole bunch of Chinese writing down there. So that's a second expedition. And this guy in Mexico shows that they did go on down past San Diego, down into Mexico. And so there's multiple trips. It's not just a one and done. They've been going back and forth for thousands of years. And John and I are now finding proof that it did happen. It was not just a legend. There's actual proof of it in the petroglyphs.
Richard, may I add something?
Sure, definitely.
One, all of the Chinese we have found has been confirmed by multiple Chinese scholars, including Kenichi Takashima, who, if you look on, you Google his name, Kenichi Takashima, he is the world's foremost authority. And he has also confirmed that, yes, these are Chinese. As far as Quetzalcoatl, I believe there's an Aztec Mayan folklore that he was the bearded white man from the West who came over and gave the Indians knowledge. So that's part of the Aztec Mayan folklore also, that it was from the West that this bearded guy came, and then he went back and supposedly he's supposed to come back again. And that's where when Cortez, I think it was, came in, they mistook him for being Quetzalcoatl. So in addition to the snake aspect, there's also the folklore of that taking place.
Yeah, also some of the Mayan calendars match the Chinese calendars, and the animals depicting the months match up. The dragon in China and the Quetzalcoatl in the Americas, the jaguar in the Americas and the tiger in China, on the same months, not just the same animal or types of animals, but the animals dominated the same months. There's a lot of information that I can't go over in just a small talk like this, but there is much more information out there, a lot more research to be looked at. I'm just wetting your whistle on it, just barely scratching the surface. Any other comments?
Trying here, I don't think so. Very interesting.
Thank you so much, Richard. We sure appreciate you and bearing with us in our explorations here of technology, person and Zoom meetings.
Well, I hope I entertained you guys and gave you something to think about and some research to look into.